Hey, welcome to another video. So today we're going to be going into the powers and abilities of Emperor Palpatine. But before we begin, please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, join the Sith Citadel Discord, links in the description, and consider becoming a join member or sending a super thanks if you wish to further support the channel. Otherwise, let's jump straight into it. Alright, so despite his frail appearance, Darth Sidious was immensely skilled in lightsaber combat, having mastered every conceivable form by the time of the Clone Wars. As a result, he effortlessly killed Aegon Kolar and Saesee Tiin, who are considered to be two of the finest lightsaber duelists of their time, each with a single blow. And while he engaged with Mace Windu, he easily slew the formidable Kit Fisto only moments later. He then went toe-to-toe with Windu, even briefly giving the upper hand, only being disarmed by the latter when Windu sensed Anakin Skywalker's fear. Later, Sidious, though confused by Yoda's sheer skill and power, was able to almost go toe-to-toe with Yoda himself for an extended period of time, but was eventually defeated and disarmed by the Grand Master, forcing him to rely on the Force for the rest of the confrontation. In addition, shortly after the formation of the Galactic Empire, Sidious effortlessly killed 3 of the 5 Jedi prisoners brought before him in a single swift strike. Many years later, Sidious and one of his clone bodies engaged and defeated Luke Skywalker in a one-on-one lightsaber duel in his clone labs on Biss, and barely lost to the latter in their second encounter. It should be noted that Luke's victory was also aided by the fact that he was boosted by Leia's Force Harmony. He was ambidextrous and could change his fighting style at a whim, keeping his opponents unsure of what his next move would be. Having fully mastered every single form of lightsaber combat, and all their techniques and stances, and capable of using each form equally effectively, ambidextrously, Sidious drew his opponents in, fighting less than his true capability, and then striking the final blow when his opponents thought they had the better of him. When fighting at full strength, the Sith Lord was a terrifying opponent. During his assassination of the Grand Protectorate, the speed and ferocity of his technique was so great that it appeared as though his victims were dispatched by a phantom. Sidious had an extremely aggressive dueling style, and augmented his swordplay by use of Force speed, which allowed him to defeat 3 experienced Jedi Masters at once with very little effort. His style was a combination of brutal aggression and lethal precision, making him an almost unstoppable opponent. Sidious' brutal fighting style allowed him to overwhelm Luke Skywalker during their first duel, and Skywalker only managed to defeat him during their second altercation. In fact, the only people known to have defeated him in lightsaber combat were Mace Windu, Yoda, and Luke Skywalker. Although the full extent of Sidious' mastery of each form of lightsaber combat have not been displayed, he has enough competence in the forms of Form Juyo, Makashi, and Naiman, and also apparently Shien or Sarisu, to teach them to his apprentice Darth Maul. At times, Sidious displayed considerable proficiency in applying Force attacks into his lightsaber combat, which can be attributed to his superb skills in Naiman. He also used Form 5 opening stance when up against Mace Windu, and at times he displayed reasonable skills in deflection, apparently due to his master of Shien. Although Sidious usually used one lightsaber, he was also exceptionally accomplished in Jar-Kai, wielding both of his weapons against Darth Maul and Savage Opress, with impeccable proficiency. Utilizing a violently ferocious, yet flawlessly fluid fighting style, his skill in dual-blade combat was great enough that he was able to not only fight on par with both brothers simultaneously, but he was able to gain the upper hand, ultimately separating them from each other. He then proceeded to quickly kill Opress, despite his immense physical strength and use of a double-bladed lightsaber, and all the while simply toying with him. Once he was alone with Maul, who had added another lightsaber to his own. Sidious retained a slight advantage over his former apprentice, and while he was briefly pushed back on the blade lock, he was ultimately able to best him, forcing his lightsabers down Maul's own and then ripping them away from the Zabrak's grasp. However, this was not accomplished without visible effort and struggle. Sidious had nearly been bested by a 17-year-old Maul on Hypor, despite the Zabrak being in a weakened state. While Sidious may have never wielded a saber staff in combat, viewing them as fit only for barbarians within the Sith, he nonetheless appeared capable with this variation. He was competent enough to teach Maul on how to use it, and was dexterous enough to spin his apprentice saber staff with a single hand. Ironically, despite Sidious' masterful dueling skills, he was fairly disdainful of lightsaber combat in general, believing the Sith to have grown beyond the need for lightsabers. They would use those weapons, he once told Darth Vader, if only to humiliate the Jedi. His saber would later be viewed as a holy relic by the one Sith. In addition to his lightsaber combat skills, Darth Sidious was one of the most powerful Force users of all time, perceived in the Force by his apprentice, Darth Tyrannus, as a black hole of the dark side. Both Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, likewise, had viewed Sidious as having become the dark side's most powerful expression. Sidious' relationship with the dark side was so deep to the point that he became a possession of the dark, and the dark became a possession of his. As an apprentice under Darth Plagueis, he learned all about the dark side powers and his predecessors, and quickly excelled to the point that he soon came to consider himself the Sithari. Sidious' mastery of the Force was so immense, having spent decades immersing himself in the many facets of the Force and researching it, which reportedly granted him full mastery over almost all known Force powers, and he also managed to discover and master previously unknown techniques, allowing him to create new powers almost at whim. Because of this, even he at times wondered if the Force had been so strong in anyone before him, feeling a monster rising from the core of himself, impatient to unleash itself. Shortly after the death of his master, Sidious received a full, powerful vision from voices that proclaimed his reign. He himself considered that the simple act of glancing at him with tantamount of glimpsing the dark energy that bound and drove the galaxy. Even prior to his induction into the Sith, his Force potential was powerful enough to block out Darth Plagueis' mind-reading abilities when they first met, and later able to effortlessly and telekinetically murder his parents, siblings, and their personal guards. In 19 BBY, Palpatine was considered by Vader to be so powerful that in Vader's view at that point, Sidious could only be overthrown by Vader if he had the help of Karnus Mur via his talesman. Mur being a Gen Jedi, founder of the Sith, who would later go on to briefly contend with Darth Krayt, and who was thought to pose a threat to the entire galaxy. Even as Sidious continued to age, he was extremely powerful and skilled in the use of the Force, with his power allowing him to sustain himself beyond his natural lifespan. At full power, Sidious' Force abilities proved so great that it required a large amount of highly powerful and skilled Force adepts to defeat him, as shown by how he was captured by Zaren's forces with the aid of Lyn and her students aboard the Majestic, and when he was defeated over Pinnacle Base by the combined efforts of Luke Skywalker, Leia Skywalker, and the unborn Anakin Solo. Vader himself, being greatly weakened from his injuries as he was, would not dare to challenge Sidious without aid from another powerful Force adept, resulting in him searching for a powerful apprentice. By his death, Sidious had become a nexus of the dark side, of such power he could tear apart the fabric of space. Even after his death, Sidious' power proved too great to be contained by chaos, and required every single deceased Jedi Knight to keep Sidious from escaping chaos and wreaking havoc on the galaxy. It seems that only Yoda had the Force abilities required to single-handedly duel Sidious to a standstill, although even that was not enough to defeat the Dark Lord, due to the Sith's use of the battlefield. Another single individual who was briefly halted Sidious was Galen Merrick, but only through the dark side boosting him was he able to best Sidious. Though Sidious ultimately managed to kill off Merrick and was unharmed by the explosion of power upon the rogue Sith death. In addition, he could also obscure his presence and ties to his public persona and vice versa, as especially evident by how he managed to elude even well-trained Jedi Masters from realizing that Palpatine and Sidious were one and the same. Despite his ability to conceal his own presence with the Force, and his ability to sense others, there are two examples of the Force sense capabilities failing him. The first time was when he encountered Anakin Skywalker, where he provided him with a room and didn't even sense Anakin's Force potential, let alone realize he had a super high midichlorian count, until Jedi Master Dooku informed him of such when meeting with him at a diner. The second time was regarding Anakin Skywalker's son, Luke. Just before the Battle of Endor, where he was unable to sense Luke's presence as Vader's son, breaking protocol, went over to his throne room to notify him of the development personally. Sidious was incredibly skilled in Force lightning, and was known to use this both as a lethal attack and as a way of torturing his enemies. If used to its full potency, he could instantly reduce one or more people into charred husks. Although his Force lightning was generally blue in color, it also emerged as purple. Despite his formidable skill in many other aspects of the Force, Force lightning was arguably his trademark ability, and one that served him well against extremely dangerous opponents, many times either resulting in their defeat or near defeat. When cornered by Mace Windu, Sidious viciously attacked him with lightning that was not nearly overwhelming to Mace Windu, but also nearly caused Windu's saber to bend to Sidious' will when locked in combat with the latter's lightning. Once Anakin cut off Windu's hand, he fired the full strength of his lightning at Windu, torturing the Jedi for a few moments before using his lightning to throw Mace out the window to his death. Sidious' potency with Force lightning was so powerful that he was even able to catch Yoda off guard with it, throwing the Jedi Master into the wall. Later on in the duel, was able to disarm him of his lightsaber with a powerful blast of it, despite the Grandmaster's attempts to ground it, and subsequently nearly overwhelmed Yoda's efforts to absorb it. However, it should be noted that Sidious used his height to his advantage by elevating his body, in order to target the lightning above Yoda's Tudaman's defense. And Yoda ultimately succeeded in absorbing the attack. The resulting explosion not only overwhelmed and blasted Sidious aside, but also separated Yoda from Sidious, allowing the Jedi to flee. If it hadn't been for Darth Vader's shocking intervention with his own hubris, he would have succeeded in using his lightning to torture Luke Skywalker to death, who had demonstrated that despite his natural talent in the Force at the time, even he was utterly powerless against the strength which ended up killing Vader due to the latter's repeated exposure to it. He could also use the Force in conjunction with telekinesis to electrify objects while levitating them before hurling them at his opponents, thus increasing the damage potency of the attack, called Lightning Grenade. Sidious' mastery of Force lightning allowed him to generate a shield made of lightning, which he utilized during his fight with Merrick in conjunction with Force flight, to temporarily retreat from the battle in order to have his Red Guards and Senate Guards attack Merrick, which proved to be impenetrable to Merrick with either the Force or his lightsaber. Sidious was also extremely skilled with telekinesis. During his battle with Yoda, he levitated several Senate pods simultaneously, including the one he was standing on, with incredible dexterity and precision. Likewise, he was skilled enough with telekinesis that he was also able to remove Luke Skywalker's restraints while barely even lifting his finger, when meeting face-to-face on the second Death Star. He could also easily overpower and fling both Maul and Oppress into the window of Mandalore's castle, and keep them firmly pinned until he released them. He was incredibly proficient in Force Choke to the point where he can perform it to deadly effect without needing to see the target, even when large distances away, as shown by how he was able to completely subdue Tyrannus in a chokehold with a single hand gesture, and later levitated and choked 2 Mandalorians to death, even before arriving in their location. After his first death, he demonstrated even greater skill with telekinesis, to the point where he could, with just a few moments of effort, disintegrate a lightsaber in the hands of Leia Organa Solo without harming her. Sidious was a master of force speed, implementing it into his fighting style and allowing him to move so quickly that his opponents would often find themselves unable to react in time. Darth Sidious also had the power of force flight, able to hover above the ground in standard gravity, as well as being capable of surrounding himself with a miniature storm of malevolent force energy that showed the movements of and tortured all caught in it. After the first decade of his apprenticeship under Darth Plagueis, Sidious possessed an increasingly feral usage of force rage, demonstrated when he assassinated the members of the Grand Protectorate that organized his and his master's failed assassination attempt. Sidious was also the only known being capable of producing a force storm of his own power, a dark side technique which he himself discovered, and that had enough power to kill an entire world. Using his anger and his will, he was able to rip the space-time continuum and create a hyperspace wormhole. Even though he claimed to have quickly achieved the mastery needed to conjure a storm simply by willing it, he openly admitted that at the early stages of his discovery and subsequent learning of the power, even he was not able to fully control it, but had full confidence he would ultimately acquire the ability to achieve complete control over the storms he created with more practice. By 10 ABY, the Emperor appeared to have mastered the techniques to the level needed to be fully capable of controlling a force storm, to the point that he was able to send out several storms at whim, and a singularly fully powered storm required the combined efforts of Luke, Leia, and the unborn Anakin Solo through the light side to turn his dark side creation against him. He was also proficient in pyrokinesis, as evidenced by how he was able to murder Senator Team, while the latter hid behind a curtain by easily coaxing a gentle flame from a gas-powered fireplace into a raging inferno. His proficiency in pyrokinesis was also implied in what turned out to be the first dream Vader had since becoming Vader, where Sidious, who was implied to have somehow survived being killed in that dream, conjured a wall of fire separating Vader from his son. Another very dangerous and advanced force technique utilized by the Emperor was the ability to use the force to transfer his essence, as well as the essence of others, which he used to survive death on at least 2 occasions. He had a supply of clone bodies ready to house his spirit until the last one succumbed to his own corrupting power and the sabotage of his subordinates. He also, when taking over a host body, overwrote the soul and personality of the being to fully dominate over it. He used this power not only as a pathway to immortality, but also as a particularly cruel and sadistic form of torture. It is known that he killed and resurrected Imperial engineer Bevel Lemon Slick 7 times as punishment for the destruction of the first Death Star. Sidious was also able to transfer his spirit into the bodies of individuals who were biologically unrelated to him. After his first death, his spirit was able to possess the body of Jang Groga. Through Sidious' power drove Groga completely insane for a time. He also intended to possess the body of Anakin Solo after the genetic material for his clone bodies was sabotaged, though he never got the chance to do so. He also possessed at some point other people as well. Some knowledge on the manipulation of midichlorians, having done so with Darth Plagueis in the grand experiment taking place in 42 BBY, that indirectly and unwittingly resulted in the birth of the Chosen One, Anakin Skywalker. He was unable to fully master the technique prior to murdering Plagueis, though he claimed to have a level of competence with the technique that would have enabled him to save Plagueis while he was suffocating. Additionally, Palpatine was able to heal others through the light side of the Force. Among the Emperor's powers was the ability to channel the collective life essences of billions to sustain himself and his dark side adepts. His victims would live in a dreamlike state, while his own power grew. The entire population of Biss lived under this spell until the planet's destruction by the galaxy gun. It was mentioned by Luke Skywalker that the Emperor's very voice had a hypnotic lull to it whenever he was outwardly projecting his dark side force powers. Darth Sidious was highly adept in foreseeing the future, often utilizing the power to see his plots to fruition, ensuring that all would proceed as he had envisioned. Furthermore, Sidious was extremely proficient in Force stealth, able to hide his dark nature from the Jedi Order for many years, allowing himself to be discovered. Sidious was so powerful in the dark side that he was able to cloud the Jedi's vision, making it exceedingly difficult to predict future events. This allowed him to bide his time and plot his rise to power while the Jedi were unable to sense him. Overall, his powers of control and persuasion had been drawn from the very blackest depths of the dark side of the Force. Sidious grew to become a highly accomplished and knowledgeable master of Sith alchemy, an ancient art he was taught by Darth Plagueis, and did extensive research on it. He wrote about alchemy and the creation of monsters, the unfinished last part of his Dark Side book. He rediscovered the long-forgotten art of creating chrysalides, and used it to alchemically alter rancors into fearsome chrysalis beasts used as pets in his citadel on Biss. He also created shadow droids, hybrid mechanic organic starfighters controlled by his own will, used against the Republic after their return in a cloned body. He may have also used alchemy to hide his true face from the Jedi and the rest of the galaxy as a senator and chancellor of the Republic. The Dark Lord was knowledgeable and proficient in Sith magic, as he was aware of and was able to perform an ancient ritual that cast a powerful and convincing dark illusion, capable of fooling even Yoda. And he is also able to use arcane rituals to detect poisons and drugs in food and drinks. Sidious was also capable of performing a Sith magic ritual to enhance the Force sensitivity of other people, which he used to enhance his dark side elite's Force powers. He also could utter incantations in the bulk language. So what do you guys think of the abilities of Darth Sidious? Please let me know in the comments down below. If you haven't already, please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, join the Sith Citadel Discord, links in the description, and consider becoming a join member or sending a super thanks if you wish to further support the channel. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.